What's going on, guys? Billy here, and today we're going to be comparing the new DJI Mavic Air 2 to the DJI Mavic 2 Zoom. Now, if you're at all interested, I'm also uploading a second video going live at the same exact time as this one, comparing the Mavic Air 2 to the Mavic 2 Pro. And even though the Mavic 2 Zoom and Mavic 2 Pro are very similar drones, I've got very different opinions about how the Mavic Air 2 stacks up against DJI's higher end offering. So if you're interested in that comparison between the Mavic Air 2 and Mavic 2 Pro, I'll leave a link in the top right corner and down in the description. So if you guys are coming from that previous comparison video where I looked at the Mavic Air 2, comparing it to the Mavic 2 Pro, you'll know I took a very technical approach. I compared both drones head to head basically the entire time to help you understand exactly which drone is right for you. And that's what I always do in these comparison videos, is point out the strong suits, point out the weak points, point out which drone does which better to help you understand which one is right for you. And I do that through kind of building up to an end statement that really summarizes everything together, right? I want to give you guys the best understanding of what each drone does for the price you buy it for to help you decide which one to buy. But I'm just going to come out and say it. You shouldn't buy the Mavic 2 Zoom unless you want it for one specific reason. Of course, it can zoom, but still, don't buy the Mavic 2 Zoom because the Mavic Air 2 does everything that drone does and more. So I feel that I would be doing a disservice if I didn't share the same spec for spec comparison that I started out with in my comparison of the Mavic Air 2 and Mavic 2 Pro. So let's start with that price. The Mavic 2 Zoom costs an extra $550 as it sits relatively in between the Mavic Air 2 and Mavic 2 Pro, but closer to the Mavic 2 Pro in DJI's Mavic drone lineup. So I want you guys to look at these numbers below the price. They all are very close in comparison, with certain categories outclassing each other ever so slightly. Like the Mavic Air 2 has better flight time, but by only 3 minutes. The Mavic 2 Zoom has a faster top speed, but only by like 2.5 miles per hour. The transmission system is also the same with both drones using OcuSync 2, although DJI decided to advertise 2 extra kilometers or 1.2 extra miles with the Mavic Air 2. I personally haven't noticed any drastic difference. They're both great at cutting through interference and in the range department. How about that camera though? The Mavic Air 2 costs $550 less than the Mavic 2 Zoom and outclasses its camera in every important category. It's got a larger sensor, it's got a better onboard processor, it has a higher megapixel count for sharper photos, it has more frame rate options when you're shooting video, it also has a higher max bit rate. The only thing the Mavic 2 Zoom has over the Mavic Air 2 and really any other drone is that it can optically zoom in 2 times, and you can zoom in even further if you're going to be using the digital zoom. And as great as it is, I've never really found it to be a great reason to grab the Mavic 2 Zoom over any other drone. I understand that this sounds like a first world problem, choosing to fly another drone over the Zoom, which I've got to say is still a fantastic drone. Like if you've got a Mavic 2 Zoom, don't feel left out. This drone is still great, but if you're in the market for buying a drone, I just don't think it's the smartest buy with the Mavic Air 2 now on the block. You see, when I'm looking at feature sets in a drone to decide which one I want to buy, having an optical zoom really isn't at the top of my list. I prefer having a larger sensor. I prefer a higher megapixel count. I prefer a larger sensor, and even moving away from cameras, I prefer a drone that's smaller with a longer flight time, and everything I just described is the new Mavic Air 2, which is sold at a much lesser price. If you look at some of the comparison images taken from both of these drones, the Mavic Air 2 and Mavic 2 Zoom, it's really hard to tell the difference of which is better. You see, the Mavic 2 Pro, in my opinion, has that slight edge over the camera found in the Mavic Air 2, and it might take a trained eye to spot these differences or even care about why, say, a bigger sensor is better, but the similarity between the images taken from the Mavic Air 2 and the Mavic 2 Zoom further solidifies my initial point as to why you shouldn't buy the Mavic 2 Zoom now that the Mavic Air 2 is out. You have more flexibility with higher megapixel counts and more frame rate options in a less expensive drone. Not to mention, DJI has really outdone themselves with the new HDR shooting modes in both shooting photos and video with the Mavic Air 2. These of course aren't available on the Mavic 2 Zoom or even the Mavic 2 Pro, but it just goes to show you that better software on a newer camera can sometimes be reason enough to choose one over the other. In this case, the Mavic Air 2 over the Mavic 2 Zoom. Not to mention, did I say that it's also less expensive? You know, I feel really bad continuing to belittle the optical zoom feature on the Mavic 2 Zoom because in reality, it's a great idea. It makes this drone very unique, and there's a lot of times when I'm flying my drone that I wish I had a 50mm lens, and then I remember, oh yeah, the Mavic 2 Zoom exists. But again, as I said, everything else this drone offers just doesn't live up to the price. $1350 for this drone when the Mavic Air 2 is around. Again, it's a big offer. I feel like I've already said that like 2 or 3 times, but regardless, the big thing is price. The big thing is value. You get so much more value out of the Mavic Air 2 than you do with the Mavic 2 Zoom. There's more value for less money, in my opinion. Now, moving forward from here, right, the Mavic Air 2 is pushing on the heels of the Mavic 2 Pro, and in my opinion, it supersedes what the Mavic 2 Zoom can offer. Again, for the price, I continue to say it. But regardless, it's got to make you wonder, what is DJI going to do with their higher end drone offerings in the Mavic lineup? Because there's a big price gap for not a whole lot of return in terms of what you get for value. Now, if I had to guess, and DJI, if you're watching, I really hope that you take this into account, being able to combine the bigger sensor and the higher megapixel count with an optical zoom into one camera, that would be the absolute best thing. In my opinion, the optical zoom isn't a bad thing. It's the rest of the drone that makes the Mavic 2 Zoom a bad buy. But the optical zoom feature, that is something that'd be really cool to keep in DJI's Mavic lineup, and it really set it apart from all of the other drones. The Evo doesn't do that. The Parrot doesn't do that. The Skydio doesn't do that. That would be a really cool feature that sets it apart. The rest of the drone from top to bottom, it's smaller than the Mavic 2 Zoom. It's got better flight time. It's quieter. It's easier to use. Just as I said in my Mavic 2 Pro and Mavic Air 2 comparison video, it's got a better remote controller. There's just so many reasons to buy the Mavic Air 2, and the biggest one just happens to be the price. So, if you guys want to, go ahead and check out the other comparison video I made. I'll put that link up in the top right corner, and again, I'll put that down in the description, the top right corner. Let me know what you guys think between the Mavic 2 Zoom and the Mavic Air 2. Do you have a Mavic 2 Zoom? Do you think that if you bought the Mavic Air 2, it would be an upgrade? In my opinion, when people say to me, like, I've already got the Mavic 2 Pro, should I buy the Mavic Air 2? It's kind of like, maybe, because in some ways it's an upgrade. If you want higher end specs in terms of like more frame rate options or 48 megapixels, then yeah, it could be an upgrade. So kind of a weird time to be buying a DJI drone right now, but just know that the Mavic Air 2 is going to push DJI to make a really, really badass version of whatever their next prosumer Mavic will be. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.